So, Kyoko versus Shuichi. Who is the ultimate detective? This is a question that has been questioned since the dawn of time. But it's not a question we're going to be questioning in this video. Could Kyoko solve V3 is what I want to talk about today, regardless of whether or not she's the better detective. It's no hidden mystery that the first game was easier than the last, but also the cast of characters in the last game showed a greater intelligence overall, so it's safe to say she's gonna have some help. We're still going to have it where she doesn't remember her ultimate talent, because the memories are weird in V3, she doesn't really have her memories, let's just not overcomplicate it. Despite waking up with Kaede, Kyoko probably wouldn't befriend her, she'd just think it weird that they have the same voice. She would probably keep to the sidelines and not really talk to anyone, a bit like Kokichi, and then she'd join in with everyone else on doing some investigations of the school. If Kyoko doesn't befriend Kaede, then Kaede may end up not being the black end of Chapter 1, because she might look suspicious if she's messing around in the library by herself, or she may try kill someone a different way and actually end up being the murderer and not just framed for it. This is all speculation, and since we've no way of knowing what would actually happen, let's just pretend the first murder goes the same way. Kyoko would definitely be able to solve the first case. I believe that Shuichi suspected Kaede from the start, but he was in love with her and was blindsided by it, but that's not something that would hinder Kyoko. More importantly, she would have picked up on the blood splatter from Rantaro's head being in the wrong direction for Kaede to have killed him. I also believe that she would have picked up on Korekyo mentioning Tsumugi going to the bathroom, though I'm not sure she would actually bring up these points in the trial, because they might make her look suspicious. And everyone would vote for Kaede anyway, since she would just admit it. Because of what Korekyo said about Tsumugi being in the bathroom, Kyoko would then immediately check the bathroom if she had not already discovered the secret passageway. She may not necessarily find it, but she'd be suspicious and keep checking. I'm just thinking potentially it could be like in the first game where she finds it in Chapter 3 and then goes missing for the entire investigation. Shuichi would have found it if he had gone into the girls' bathroom or investigated at all. I think she'd be more sceptical about the horse A message. I do think she'd come to the conclusion that it is some kind of code, or at least that be one of her theories, but I don't think she'd vocalise it in case it puts a target on her back from the mastermind. One thing I'm not as sure about is whether or not going to talking about the bugs would raise suspicion. I'm just going to say it doesn't matter too much, even though it does, but I'm going to pretend it doesn't because I am not a detective. Realistically, by now, Kyoko would have a target on her back from all of her meddling. We also know that the smart character canonically cannot die until Chapter 5, that's when the plot armor dies, so I guess she would be fine really. But still, Tsumugi would probably want her gone now or sometime soon. She'd probably do something with the flashback light, since the motive probably can't change, but because plot armor, we're going to say that Chapter 2 just happens like normal. So Kyoko wears gloves, that's a thing that's made a deal out of in the first game. So I think she would pick up on the whole glove thing faster than Shuichi. I think she'd figure out the whole zipline thing pretty quickly. But one thing I think she would struggle more with than Shuichi is figuring out the magic trick. Shuichi's better at solving puzzles, whereas Kyoko's better at solving murders. That wasn't a complete mystery anyway, because, you know, if they were all about to die, I'm sure, at least I hope, Himiko would actually reveal what happened. And also, you know, there's a lot of smart people there. Potentially, if Kyoko couldn't work it out, then Kokichi would have done. That reminds me of how Kokichi sometimes like gives out hints, you know, about the murder, like as if he knows what's going on, or about like you know, what's really going on, like with the entire setup and stuff. And I'm just wondering if, because Kyoko actually investigates and actually would probably know more than Shuichi did at this point, would Kokichi still give out those same hints? I feel like I'd be able to understand Kyoko better. Not that she's more of an open book, but I feel like someone like Kokichi would understand Kyoko more because she's not as outwardly empathetic anyway as Shuichi. Kyoko would need someone to trust, and I'm not sure if she would have found that person yet. On Kokichi's board, it said that Shuichi was trustworthy, but obviously Shuichi isn't here. We know that Kokichi was trying to defeat the mastermind, but from Kyoko's point of view, he's probably just meddlesome, like Byakuya. Like, he's not using his full potential. Kokichi trusted Kaito in the end, but I don't think Kyoko would trust Kaito because he's an idiot and too loud-spoken. It's hard to tell who she would trust, because none of them are like Makoto, the closest to maybe being Kibo, but I don't think she'd trust a robot. So I think she'll hold off for now. Kind of like Kokichi. In Chapter 3 she will be against destroying the flashback lights and obviously not join Anji's group. She might want to join Kyo's group just to see what the Necronomicon's all about, but I think she would be against sort of taking Monokuma's bait despite wanting to use the flashback lights. I want to say that, like in Trigger Happy Havoc, this is the chapter where she sort of disappears for the whole investigation and is using that time to explore the tunnel, while Tsumugi is distracted by the whole Necronomicon stuff. I don't think it would be as big of a deal as in Trigger Happy Havoc, because I feel like people will be more distracted by the whole seance and just all the wacky stuff that's going on in that chapter. Korekiya would probably use it against her. He probably tried to bring it up, but he was such an obvious culprit that despite Kyoko not being there for the investigation, she'd still be able to tell that it's him. She would sweep the floor with that trial. I think by now Kyoko would have a plan to defeat the mastermind, but since I'm not the ultimate detective, I don't know what that is. So let's just say it keeps going like normal. I think she would definitely end up figuring out that Kaito's sick, because that's obvious, but I'm not sure if she would trust the sick man just because he's sick. She doesn't stoop so low or doesn't become so desperate as Kokichi. Potentially, Kyoko would use the opportunity while everyone's in the VR world to explore more, explore the hidden passageway, but instead of in Chapter 3, or maybe she would do both, which would raise suspicion towards her. Even if she doesn't, I think she would still leave the VR world pretty quickly and go investigate more, and then come back to find Mew dead. This would be like what I said about the third trial, where people are suspicious of her because she's gone. Unlike the third trial, the culprit isn't as obvious, so it would make her look a lot more suspicious if she only has clues given to her from other people. I think it would be difficult for her to figure out the secret of the VR world and the map, but since Kokichi set it all up anyway, it's fine. In the end, it's not going to matter. If we were going along the lines of Kyoko going off the script of the game as we know, not Tsumugi's script, the actual game of V3, then I believe that she and Kokichi would work together because they're both very intelligent, they both know different things. This is clearly bigger than the two of them, and I think that they could appreciate that. However, that's not the line we're going along, so let's stay on script. There wasn't much Shuichi could have done in Chapter 5, so I don't blame him for that. Kyoko would be in the same boat. However, I think she'd have a different view of Kokichi and Kaito. Kaito, because she would have never befriended him. Either that or she fell for his BS and fell in love with him like Maki. And she wouldn't have villainised Kokichi in her head either, even despite Chapter 4. She'd have a much more neutral look on the trial than Shuichi did, so I believe she'd be able to come to the same conclusion, just quicker. Since Kyoko would have already done her own investigations, I don't think she'd actually need to do any investigating before the Chapter 6 class trial. She probably still would anyway, just because she can, and also she won't have seen Rontaro's lab yet. Otherwise it would play out quite similarly. She probably wouldn't be very open about how depressed the situation made her, and she probably also wouldn't use Kaito's words and her classmates' deaths to inspire her. After solving the trial, she would probably just give up because she's finally learned what her ultimate talent is, only to find out that it's not real anyway. If Kyoko went down the same route as Shuichi, no, she couldn't beat the game. She couldn't defeat the mastermind. She could solve it, but she couldn't end it. But if she didn't go down Shuichi's route and she did her own thing, then she would have ended the game earlier, because the mastermind in V3 was more obvious than in Trigger Happy Havoc. To answer my own question, yes, Kyoko could solve V3. If you enjoyed this, let me know and I'll do a Could Shuichi Solve Trigger Happy Havoc video.